All right, welcome back. We are Game 2014 and the Fall 2020 semester at George Brown, and it's Week 12, Mobile Game Development 1, and it's part 2 of our broadcast. Where last we left off, we were talking about how our little character, we developed a little health bar for the character, and the health bar that moves along with the character. And now what we want to do is put some kind of life counter, as well as some scene management. We go to the first scene, this play scene, and then an end scene. Okay, so pretty straightforward stuff. Okay, let's do that. So we got a couple things we can use. One thing that we can use is inside of our assets. I've given you additional packs. Again, these are free assets from the asset store. If you go to external assets, notice that there is now an asset land forest assets, and Sunnyland forest, and also a Sunnyland woods. If you look in the woods pack under environment, you can see that there is different clouds. They've sliced up the clouds and the mountains and the trees, and you can do a kind of parallax scroll view plus additional sliced assets that you can use if you wanted to make a kind of a wooded scene. Okay, so that's one thing that is included here. There's also the player has a different sprite altogether. It is a squirrel, so that's the little squirrel. If you want to use a squirrel instead of the character that we have right now, so little squirrel. Plus, there's also additional enemies if you wanted to include other enemies here. For example, the creator has made an ant, as well as a grasshopper and a gator, which is pretty scary. Okay, so some stuff that we've got here in this little game. Sunnyland forest assets includes additional stuff. It includes our player, which is I regret not using this little floppy-eared character. It's hard to see here, but actually it's a let's take a look. I'm just going to double click it and open it in Fireworks, if I'm not wrong. It's actually a really a much more interesting character than what we had. This is kind of a character with ears, and it's got really good animations and everything else. So I probably should have used this character, but I decided not to, so that's okay. And there's also miscellaneous stuff. We have some special effects. There's a star animation that we can use, and there's also something called HUD. HUD actually is a life counter, and I want to use this HUD right when I'm kind of showing stuff on my screen here. All right, but how to do it? Now there's 4 steps. HUD that has 0, it's kind of hard to see, but let's see if I can make it bigger so you can see the HUD. So you can see here that there's HUD 1, which is 0 lives. HUD 2, which has 3 lives, or 1 life. HUD 3 that has 2 lives, and HUD 4 that has 3 lives. Okay, so that's kind of what is there. And what I want to do is I want to have all of these, but I want to switch from one to the other when I get hit. Okay, so a couple ways to do that. We can create our own structures and blah, blah, blah. Yes, or instead, we can use a state machine to do it. And I'm going to go that route. It's a little bit more convoluted, but some more fun. In the canvas is where I want this thing to be. So I want the HUD, or the lives counter, to be in here in the canvas. So there's a couple of approaches. The approach I'm going to take is I'm going to drag and drop all of this, just like we normally do. But notice our pixels per unit is like 100. And if I drag and drop and I make it 16 again, just like last time. So say I make it 16, I drag and drop this whole thing, make an animation, and I want to make an animation for this one, but it's gonna go through all of them, right? I don't want it to cycle. That doesn't make any sense, right? So we want to instead to go to animations. Inside there, in the platformer, I want to make a scoreboard, kind of a scoreboard setting, some new folder. We're going to call this scoreboard. So some animations for the scoreboard, or a HUD, whatever you want to call it. Inside the animations, I'm going to call this the lives you know, kind of clip, if you will. I'm just going to call it lives, right? Because it's going to be renamed in a second. All right, so what did it give me? What did this thing give me? And, well, where is it? It's way down here. So it's kind of what it's going to look like when it's in the scene. When it's in the scene, I want it to be here, right? And if I was to run this the way it is right now, it's just going to cycle. It's going to show me like a little, you know, this is what it's going to look like when I lose a life, right? But I don't want it to be in world space. I want it to be in screen space, and I want it to do this. So I want to take this HUD, and we're going to call this the, you know, lives heads-up display. So lives HUD. We'll call that lives HUD. And I want to put this on the canvas. So if I take this whole thing, put it on the canvas, and then I want to run it, right? So wait, what? How come it didn't move? It's still here. And what happened, right? So there's a couple problems with this approach, right? When I can't just move it onto the canvas like this. I mean, I can, but the problem is if I do that and I run it, then, well, it's still in world space. So that's kind of bad, right? So that's neat and all, but yeah, I need a canvas renderer for sure. Otherwise, it's not going to render. But then there's a problem with that. So let's add a canvas renderer to the HUD. So here's my lives HUD, and here's my animator and my sprite renderer and my transform. I want a canvas renderer, so I want to say canvas renderer. And if I put that in place, and let's move that up, move up. That should be like the first, almost the first thing that's up here, right? So transform, but then we have this. But where's the? Look, it's still got the regular transform. Well, that's no good. Again, if I run this thing, you're going to see that it's not in canvas space at all. So that's a problem. All right, well, let's get rid of that. So I mean, I've already got the HUD, and I just need a controller for that. So it should be pretty simple, right? So let's get rid of this, delete. And we'll add a new item. So we create a UI, and I want to add a, wait, what? I mean, is it a panel? No. Is it an image? Kind of, that's the closest thing. It's not a raw image, right? So it's kind of like an image. All right, so there's my image, and now it gives me my rect transform that I wanted, right? It replaces that. I've got a canvas renderer, and I got an image. So I need to do it this way, okay? But my image is like way over here. I want to just use this as positioning only. So just put this where it's supposed to be, which is kind of somewhere over here. I don't want an image. I want, because it won't render, I want a sprite renderer. So let's get rid of the image, remove. And let's instead put in a sprite renderer like we did before. Sprite renderer. Otherwise, there won't be animation. And then connect that sprite, which is, I want to kind of do that HUD sprite, right? Which is like lives HUD. What did I call it? Oh man. So I go up to here and go to the animations, and in my platform and my scoreboard I have HUD 1. Oh, that's terrible, right? And what is it going to need? Well, it's going to need this HUD that I selected before. So HUD of 4 is what I want. So image, it's going to go HUD 4. Let's rename this thing because it's not an image anymore. It's lives HUD. Okay, there's HUD 4. Cool. It's not showing up. What? But why? Okay, hold on a second. So here's my sprite renderer. I got my HUD 4 not showing up. I got my canvas renderer, but not showing up. It's tiny. Okay, that could be it. So let's take a look. If I go to double click, it's like way down here now, right? Because it needs to be like 1-to-1. So let's go take all this again and go to pixels per unit. We'll go 1-to-1. We're going to say also that it's point no filter, center, and no compression, and press apply. And now it's bigger. But well, it's still tiny, right? So that's kind of where it is. So here's my canvas, my lives HUD, and let's make this like, I don't know, how big is this thing in real life? It's like 56 by 11. So let's make the size of this thing by chance 56 by 11. First and foremost, 56 by 11. Let's make sure that it covers the same size. It's a 1-to-1 thing. So now I've just made it the same size as this. Okay, now let's scale it up. Let's make it so like it's like, I don't know, 100 times bigger. That's too big. Okay, how about 50 times bigger? That's too big. How about 10 times bigger? That's more like it. And I might as well make this 10 times bigger, and might as well do these on the Z-axis. Okay, so I've made this all bigger, and it's going to show up now, but we need an animator. So let's add the animator in there. So we'll add a component, animator, right? And we want to attach the animator in there, which is going to be that animator, which is right now, it's going to be renamed, but it's called, by now, it's called HUD1. So we're going to pull in that animator, right? And if we run it, we should see the animation, right? Oh, I don't even see this thing. What's happening on the actual HUD? Is it actually animating? Well, it's animating up here, but what? How come I can see it up here? It's animating, but here, not happening. There's a problem. And the problem is it doesn't compute. It doesn't know what it is, right? So the way I fixed it is I have to go to the canvas and change from a screen space overlay, right? By the way, even if I went to if I went pixel perfect, let's try pixel perfect and try that out. There's some things we want to try first, right? So pixel perfect, yeah, no, that didn't work. So although pixel perfect is probably something we want to think about, let's go from screen space overlay to screen space camera. And if I change to that and I drag and drop my main camera right now into that space, and then if I look at my canvas, now my canvas is kind of hovering with my character and I see it here, right? Well, there's another problem, because if I run it now, you can see that my canvas controls, well, what about if I go here, then they disappear. Here, this is good, this is working now, but my controls need to be at another layer. So when you do this, you got to make sure that the orange layer is like way above everything else. So make it something like, I don't know, 100. It's always going to be above everything else, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be 100, but who cares? It's like way far away. All right, now if I try it, you'll see that sure enough, everything is working fine, and I can see that my HUD is where it is, and I see this rendering happening right here. I have 99 other layers. Yeah, I know, it's terrible. I feel bad. So yes, that's how you would do it. You'd have to put it in there, and we found that through a bit of trial and error earlier. Now, here's what I want to do. I don't want to show this cycling stuff. So what to do? First of all, this should not be called HUD1. This should be called the Lives HUD Animation Controller or something like that. Okay, that's the first thing you should do. Individual part. Yes, I know. So then if I look at the Lives HUD now, this is the Lives HUD Animation Controller. Yeah, good. Lives is actually, I'm going to duplicate this. First of all, let's rename this thing to Lives 3. So Lives 3, if I double click on Lives 3, you can see that I have several frames. Each one has different lives, 0, 1, 2, 3. I don't need all those. So tactics, I want to create 4 of these, right? So Control D, make one that's only 2. Control D, make one that's 1. Hear me out here, guys. Control D, make one that's 0. We don't need the 0, but we're going to put it in there just in case we want to show the characters died temporarily at some point, and we have that animation. All right, but the animations aren't going to be animations. They're going to be single frame animations now. So Lives 3 in here. So double click. I want to get rid of this one. Again, I've opened this up, and I'm getting rid of this one, this one, this one, and I'm drag and dropping this one to the 0th mark. So that's 3. Save. Lives 2. Okay, so I want to get rid of this one. You can hear where I'm going, right? This one, and all I care about is 2. Awesome. Lives 1. I want to get rid of this one, and this one, and move this one to here. Lives 0. I want to get rid of all the ones beside it except for the 0. Save. Cool. Excellente. Now that I've made my little animations, I'm going to double click on my animation controller, and where I have lives 1, this is lives 3 actually, lives 3, I'm going to call this lives 3. Lives 2, lives 1, live 0. All right, I'll use our animation. I want to make a new parameter. I'm going to call this lives state, because really this is a state machine, right? Make sure it's spelled properly. Lives state. So if I don't spell it right, that's not good. And what I want to do is live state. What if we actually make a parameter? That's why I was thinking something's wrong. Lives state. I want to call this start at 3. All right, and then what I'm going to do is make a transition to this, make a transition to this, make a transition to this, make a transition back to this, right? And again, can I ever go from lives 2 to lives 0? I mean, I have to go through lives 1, kind of. I don't think I can lose multiple lives at once. It would be probably not happening, right? We'll see. So now let's check. Do I need a transition? I don't care about has exit time. There's only 1 frame, guys. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to say live state, which is equal to 2, goes here. Live state that equals to 1 goes here. Live state that's equal to 0 goes here. Live state that's equal to 3 goes here. So from 0 back to 3, right? Now we may need to add other transitions, because otherwise we're going to be stuck here. What if I want to go to 1 from lives 3? I mean, I can't do it, right? I can only go from lives 3 to lives 2. So that's kind of a problem. So let's add another transition to there. So I should be able to get to lives 3, or I should be able to get to live 0. Because from this part, and then theoretically I should be able to get to any one of these other ones, because I can use multiple lives at once. Somehow, right? Otherwise, it won't allow you to do the animation. It won't show the animation. So again, I know this seems silly. You can't go back because I don't have a way of gaining lives back, right? But I do have a way of losing lives. So for now, I'm just going to say from this one to this one is lives 1, and from this one to this one is lives 0, right? You can also go back, no problem, live 0. And I've got a way of getting from these other things. What about from lives 2 to live 0? Yeah, I should be able to go there. I should be able to go there that way. So, again, this is silly, but it's neat too. Live 0 to live 0. I don't care about exit time, who cares? It's only 1 frame. Cool, I've got my little weird state machine here, and I want to use it now. So, let's go back to my my scripts, and I want to go back into my player behavior. So here's my player behavior script. Now I've got some stuff, but I need a reference to my animator. So back up to here where I have lives and my health bar. I want my lives animator, right? So public animator. We'll call this lives HUD, right? And what I want to do is down in here, right, where I lose my life. This will take me to the end screen, but when I lose a life, I want to actually check to see what my life is. So now there's ways of doing it. Okay, for example, I could say that whatever my current lives is. So if I go lives HUD, right? So I could set. How about get? Can I get int? I could get int, right? Whatever, depending on what my integer is, right? I could set up my next bit to whatever my lives is, you know, as an example. I could do that. So I could say, well, let's look at my lives state, right? I want to get my live state. So I read from my what it is, right? And whatever it is, I'm going to subtract 1 and put it back into the next one. All right? So because that's what's happening. When I subtract the life, whatever state I'm in, I want to go to the next one. All right? So that's what I have to do. So what I really want to do is something that looks like this. Lives HUD dot set integer lives state, and then I want to say let's get my integer, right? I know this is ugly, but hey, get my integer, because I get an integer here, right? Because that's what it does, and then subtract 1, right? So subtract 1, and that's my new, I'm setting the integer to what it's supposed to be. So this is basically going to cycle through to the next one, right? So that's when I lose my life. Lose life, everything changes, blah, 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 blah. Are you guys satisfied with that? We can set it to lives. Okay, we can also do that. If I say live set is equal to lives, that's also very good. So lives. So if lives is 3, that's what it starts with. Lives is 2, and that's also good. But we can also read. I just wanted to show you. Okay, so this is cool. Excellent. Let's go back and try it out. And we don't need to see this anymore in a second. But one thing we need to do is drag and drop into the player a reference form. I'm just going to close this down so we don't see this anymore. In the player, I need to get a reference to my lives HUD. So get lives HUD, drag and drop that in there. I'm good. And then I should be able to see it not cycling. Wait, what happened? What? How did I go to 1? What? My lives are 3. Then what happened? Mine is fine. Mine is not fine. It's not fine. Well, a couple things. Let's take a look at how I made mine. So go back to lives HUD. It says HUD 4. That's good, right? And let's take a look at my animator, because it should start off, but it went right to 0, like right to 1 again. So it moved, and that's bad. So let's take a look at what's happening here. So I don't know, maybe I made a mistake with my animator controller, platformer. I want to go to my scoreboard. I want to go to this, and let's take a look at this convoluted insanity. All right, so to go to here, I need to go to make it a 2, equals to 2. To go to here, I need to equals to 1. To go to here, I need to equals to 0. To go to here, I need to equals to 0. To go to here, I need to equals to 0. To go back to here, I need to equals to 3. So that's okay. Lives 3, lives 2. I did. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2. Oh, yeah. Did I make a mistake? Greater than. Damn. See, greater than thing equals, and that's what it was. So a silly thing like that. Okay, let's try it again, and that should be the 1. Thank you for that, Russ. And yeah, we're 3. But if I die, took a life, right? And that looks pretty cool, right? Much better than what we had before, and it's more interactive than just putting a lives number in there. So, and it's kind of like the same style as what we have here, which is cool, right? Okay, what just happened? Did I just crash? Nope, that was weird. That was really weird. All right, let's try that again. And I die, and I jump, and I jump again, and I jump again, and he kills me, and oh man, didn't quite die at half health. And I want to avoid him, so I jump, and he's coming at me, and he eats me, and he pushes me off the platform, and well, I die, right? So that's pretty cool. Yeah, well, the thing is, to me, what if you had like many other transitions or something like that, right? So Russ, the question Russ asks is, other than just showing this way to us, is there any reason to do this way and not just have a script that swaps sprites for people who are watching online? Yes, you could do that, but then what you'd have to do is you have to set up all the sprites references. You'd have to either have them all on the screen and turn them off and on, right? As an example, some people would do that. They would put it on everything on the user interface and just enable disable, so they can show the one that's enabled. They can do that. Or you'd have a list of sprites that you just change the image. You'd have an image instead of a renderer, and you swap the image with the sprite, but you still have to have 4 sprite references. I'm okay with that, but what this does is it should give you some ideas that you can use your state machine for other things other than just animation. You can use your stuff for different user interface elements. For example, you know, I want to make something transition, or I want to make something sparkle, or I want to make, and it's not just an animation, it's a one frame thing, you know, that I want it to do. I want to make my ship appear and disappear, or have invulnerability frames, you know, all those kind of things. Instead of swapping it out, you can use the built-in state machine. That's why I'm showing you. Okay, so, and again, there's less work. I didn't have to do any real coding here, other than just like turn on, turn off, right? There's a couple lines of code. Whereas the other way, you'd have to have a, I mean, you can use scriptable objects to do this. There's like tons of ways to do the same thing, right? I'm just showing you one way. Okay? All right, so yeah, this is the way it is. Append the lives value in the file name of the image you want. All right. Yeah, it's not bad. It's not a bad way of doing it either. I'm okay with that. I'm just trying to do it this way. All right, cool. So yes, this is okay. This is excellent. Now what I want to do is when I die, I want to go to the next scene, but I don't have a next scene to go to, and I need some user interface elements to make sure that they look nicer than just regular buttons. So let's see if we can try and get some assets from the asset store on this one. So I'm going to the asset store, and I found some assets. There is, if you search for buttons, and if you set your pricing to free, and if you scroll down, there's one that says Fantasy Wooden UI, free. I'm going to try this one. So I'm going to click on this thing, and I'm going to add it to my assets. Yes. And then I'm going to open it up in Unity. Yes, open in Unity. And I'm going to import these things. They're just nice looking little buttons, right? Download, import, and there's a bunch of new assets here, some text buttons and UI and stuff like that, not too many. And I'm going to import those just so that it doesn't look as ugly as the one that I had. And now I'm going to Fantasy Wooden UI free. I'm going to take that and put it inside of external assets so that it can hide it. So I don't see it all on this side. This is all my stuff, should be, and except for standard assets. All right, so now let's take a look at some of those assets. So I have fantasy items. What do I have? I have some this, which is pretty cool. I have some stuff that's this, some buttons, as an example, some parchment, you know, if I want to use a thing like this, and some other stuff. All right, so this is pretty cool. And they have some other examples, right, where you can replace some of the, I'm sure you can replace some of the stuff with this, everything else. Irony, little large, title, an exclamation, some other stuff that it has. So this is not a bad little set, and it gives you some examples of how it looks. Okay, so how do you use this stuff? And they always give you a little example scene. So let's take a look. I'm going to save my scene. And let's see what it looks like. So, I mean, I already have an idea of what I want to do with it, but let's see what the demo scene looks like here, and we'll run it. I'm just going to drag. I want to get rid of my package manager, close that tab. I don't need to see that now. All right, so what does it look like in the actual scene? So in the canvas, I have a medium board. All right, so let's take a look at what that looks like in the canvas. Here's a medium board. Here's a small board. That's pretty cool. And what about these buttons? So it looks like I have a thing called button 1. And what do I have here? My source image is a button that looks like this. And my text is this text button new, which is kind of, I don't mind that text as part, kind of the thing that I want to use. Text button new. So, so this is pretty cool for what I want to use. Text button new. And let me just see what the, how do I get that new, is that just what it says? New start and button? No? Oh yeah, these are all pre-done for you. So I'm wondering if I can take the text button layer, text button medium, and if I look at text button new, can I modify it myself, or is it just an image? I think it's just an image. Yeah. So this is an example of what to do. I can make my own buttons my own way and layer stuff in front. It would be nice if we had a nice font to do that with, but we don't. So it'd be nice if they had like kind of a really cool, I mean it is a free set, so it is what it is. But like I said, it's nice if we had, so new start, and they have a different levels, so pressed as opposed to start. So there's the pressed button. Okay, good. I think it's pretty good. I mean, for what you get, it's nicer than a regular button. And we got this little board where we can draw out what we want. Now what I'd like to have is a nice font to use, and we're going to use TextMesh Pro for that. Okay. We can probably use TextMesh Pro on top of this too to see how it works. So let's run this thing and let's see what the interactable buttons, like Michael says, it's kind of cool and it's interactable. Yeah, so that's the pressed effect. That's the pressed effect, right? And let's take a look what else it has. Cancel. And these are kind of they're really cool things. This is pretty good. I'm happy with this thing. No problem. All right, so let's make a new scene, and we're going to use some of these buttons. So, it's not what I wanted. So I'm going to go into scenes, and I want to make a brand new scene. So create a new scene, and we're going to call this scene start. And in my start scene, it's cleared up. Let's add some stuff. I want to add a canvas. So UI, I want to add a canvas element. And in the canvas, I want to add what they did, which was, now they added a button, right? So let's add the button in there. So add, so create UI, and then button. Now it says button TextMesh Pro. I may want to try that first. Let's see what that does for us. So button TextMesh Pro, it gives me the source sprite, which is UI sprite. Let's swap it out for one of those new buttons that we had. So if I go to Fantasy Wood, new UI, and let's go with that regular button, medium, let's say, a medium-sized button, and I want to drag it onto that button. There we go. All right, so that's pretty cool, and I'm okay with that. It probably needs to be bigger, so I wonder if I would do it this way. Maybe I just expand it this way. So I'll make a button that's like, I don't know, 300 by 200. Yeah, totally works. So, and it sizes nicely because it's a vector. It looks like some nice resizable font. And in my TextMesh Pro, we can make it so that the font is, I make it the font so it is white. And we can choose maybe another kind of font that we can probably find that's in there. For now, we're going to leave it as is. We're not going to change the font because I don't have a fantasy font. It'd be nice to do it. But let's increase the size of the button. It's going to say start. And let's increase the size of that button to much larger, something like, I don't know, 80. And yeah, I would love to have a nice font for this. That's for sure. All right, so, and let's look at like that button, and what we want, instead of a color tint, we want a sprite swap. And what I can do is there's a press sprite, which is medium pressed. All right. So then if I run it, we should see the same effect, Michael. So, except for the start doesn't really do much. It stays where it is. That's okay. Okay, so a little bit better. I want to make it a little bit wider because the button looks ugly the way it is. Let's make it so that it's proportionately not as high. Something like, I don't know. We made it, the text was, what did we make the text? We made the text something like 80, maybe 100. So the button size. No, let's make it needs to be bigger because of the extra spacing. And we might be able to move this thing around just a touch, you see? Just so it appears slightly raised on top of the button. That's pretty cool. And let's run it and try that out and see if that looks a bit better. I'm not sure if it looks better or worse. Okay. All right, so that's the start button, and what I want is a background. So let's go into the Fantasy Sunnyland, get that artwork for the environment back, and right now it's at 100. Let's change that to 16 and apply and drag that into the scene. And this background is the background. Cool. And let's take a look at that when I go back into the background. Okay, so that's what it looks like when we're physically there. That means it'll look like, we don't need this anymore. Close tab. It would look like this. So the button's going to hover. We have a start button, and we need some kind of thing that's in the middle, which is some kind of canvas or whatever to put there behind the button. So let's do that. Let's go into that Fantasy Wooded UI and grab some kind of UI large parchment. And let's put that inside of the canvas area. Which is really just a sprite renderer. And does it see? Can I see it? That's interesting. I can see it. And it's pretty big. It's going to make it so that it is larger this way and this way. And then some kind of Text Mesh Pro that kind of comes up there that says, and maybe in brown, that says, you know, Sunnyland or something like that. So again, this is just a placeholder. We can think about other things to make it nicer, but again, right? So let's go into the Text Mesh Pro. So right click UI, Text Mesh Pro, and let's move it up in our scene. So one thing that happened was when I dragged and dropped it in here, we had the same problem that we had before. I either have to go with an image, right? Or I need to put into the, into the canvas itself. So here's the canvas, the button is here, and it's a button, but this parchment here is not a parchment, it is a sprite renderer. So that's not good. Let's make it what it should be, which if I'm going to put it in the canvas and leave it in the canvas, no animation involved, let's add in an image, right? So let's get rid of this and add in into the canvas a UI image, and the UI image is going to have that as a background, which is UI board medium parchment. And let's see what that is. It's pretty small, but that's okay because we can layer it and we can make it wherever we want. So let's go and go. And I want to just move it so that it is the width and height. So let's say 500 by 500, maybe bigger. Say 1,000 by 800, even bigger. 1,200. Yeah, looks about right. And I probably want to move the button down. So here's my button. Let's move the button down here. Oops, undo. Yeah. Oh. And this text will be the text that I'm going to use, which is going to be brown. And we'll call this the level label. Level label. This is the button label, just so we were clear. Button label. This will be the start button. And this level label, we will make it so that it is somewhat brown. And let's choose a vertex color that's similar to this. And let's make it so that it is bigger. Okay, so font size is 36. Let's make it font size of 100. And let's say what it's supposed to say, which is Sunnyland. Sunny, welcome to Sunnyland. Maybe one word. And that needs to be wider, so that we're going to make that, let's say 2,000. Too big. Let's make it so that it is, no, 2,000 might be okay. It just needs to be bigger this way. So that's going to be, let's say, we said it's that, so maybe 120. Yeah, and then let's let us, we don't need to make it 2,000, but let's center it. That's cool. And maybe make it so it's bolded. And maybe a little bit smaller. That's way too big. Or make this bigger. Maybe make this bigger. So it's kind of like how big that is. So go into the image. This image is a board. Background. Board. Backgrounds. I'll make that so it's even bigger. 1,400. And we'll move that stuff around. So we'll say that the level label can be not that big, but maybe 1,400. And we'll move that up where it's supposed to be up here. And we'll move the button slightly higher as well. Actually, maybe we'll leave the button the way it is. How about that? Good. So what does this look like in the background? It looks like, well, it looks like this. Welcome to Sunnyland. And if I play, I'm going to get this effect. I'm not sure. I think I still want to move that font down just a little bit where it was before. I'm just not happy with it. And again, what you really want to do is you want to have each of these buttons as an example, and then you what you do is you create two new graphics from these buttons. I'm just not going to do it here because we're going to run out of time. Me fooling around with graphics. Yes, we can move the script to. I'm not going to do it right now though, Michael. These are like nice little effects that you can definitely use. But I'm just going to make it so that we can go from one to the other. We have somewhat of a nice way of going from one thing to the other. It looks nicer than nothing. And, you know, we have some other options. All right. And what is it that I want to do? Oh, yes. Okay. So the next part that I want to do is make the button work, but let's add this scene. So save the scene, so start scene, and file, build settings. I want to add the start scene, so add open scenes and move this higher to the start, because you can't do any kind of scene management without it. And now let's copy it after we add the code. Let's add the code first. So first let's add a piece of code. So scripts, we'll call this the scene controller. So scene controller. So it's generic. And the scene controller is going to do the following. It's going to actually do, using Unity engine dot scene management. Sorry, let Matthew back in. Scene management, and I'm going to say that I don't need any of this for now. Instead, what I want to say is there's a public void on, we'll say on button pressed. It's going to be a button in the scene. And the on button pressed event is going to basically take us back to the platformer scene. So it's going to say scene manager dot load scene, and we'll say platformer. So both the start and the end scenes will do that. The only difference is that one will say game over, the other one will say start. Okay? And what I want to do is I want to attach this element to the canvas. So add component. Actually, we just drag and drop it onto the canvas like so. And in the button state, the start button, right, there is, just like normal, a button click event, which we can add the canvas to as an object. And then we can go through the scene controller into the on button pressed event, which is going to generate the event that we need. Save. Test. So when we test this, and now this is where we're going to get into some trouble. Start. Alright, so blah blah blah, we're okay, we're good. We're going to run. And we're going to run to the other side and run. Oops, we're going to kind of run back the other way. No, we don't want you to come at me again. No, I want to be over here. And yes, I'm going to get nailed and you're going to kill me and I'm going to restart. And you don't want to fall off the platform and we lose a life and everything still works. And we're going to lose another life and we're going to stay there. Yay. So now what I want is a mechanism to go to the end scene. And I don't have an end scene yet, but I'm going to make one. So I'm going to go to scenes really quickly, and I'm going to kind of go Control D, and now the start scene and the end scene are identical. Yay! Double click on the end scene. Let's change the message. So in the canvas, I'm going to go to the where it says start button. This is just a button. We should really be called scene button more than start button, but whatever. And the button label should say restart, right? And the but it's going to do the exact same thing as the other thing. The scene label, the level label, it's going to say game over, right? And if you want to, you can make this even bigger because hey, what the heck, why not? Because you can play around with some of this stuff. Let's make it so that it is, I don't know, 150. And let's make sure that the size of the label is at least, because we don't want it to make it to leak out, because otherwise if we do, some bad things happen sometimes when this happens in actual, when we transfer it to the device. So let's make it so it's 160. Game over. Alright, and we have our end scene, but we need to add it to the build settings. So let's add open scenes and start platformer end. Okay, so we have our end scene. I'm not changing much on it at all. We just need some bookends for now. Alright, cool. That's good. And now let's go back into the platformer scene. So in my scenes, I'm going to go into platformer and I'm going to go into the game controller for the scene. Actually, it's going to be more of the player itself. Player behavior. So in the player behavior, there's what I want to go to that scene again. So I need to do a couple things. One, I need to include Unity using Unity engine dot scene management. I need to have that in there again. And where I have that if statement where I had that to do, I'm just going to go in there and say scene manager dot load scene end. So if I die, it's going to go to the end. Are you with me? Check marks if you're with me, X if you want me to slow down. It should be pretty straightforward. Like, you guys should have done this work before. Should be nothing new for you at this point. Okay? But what we're doing is we're just setting it up, we're bookending it because we want to test everything. That's all we're doing. I'm not really making the scenes because I want to go to the start scene and the end scene. I'm doing it because I want to test how things flow, can I detect player death, and all that kind of stuff. And it kind of bookends what we need. All right, let's play this thing from the beginning to the end. Let's go here, and we're going to start off with our scenes. I'm going to go to start. And let's play. All right. And we'll make this slightly smaller. Let's play. It takes us to this scene. We're going to play right now. We don't have much the ability. All we can do is we have a small level, and we have some issues. There's still some glitches and stuff like that. All right, so the guy's going to try and kill me. And he's launching his stuff at me, and I die. Cool. All right, let's try this again. And this time, I'll let him kill me again. He's eating me. And what about this time? I'll just go towards him, and then he'll continue to. That's weird. So this is where he should be. Yeah, I was gonna say he should be killing me there. And if I die, if I fall off the platform, then boop, game over. Now, here's where I'm worried about glitchiness. Restart. And notice that there is a glitch. It says missing reference exception in my game controller. Temp bullet transform parent is equal to game controller game object dot transform. Why? Why is this the problem? And this is the problem you would have had if you used the code that we've developed before, but we would never get to this problem, right? Unless you would have got. So Russell says it's because we're using find object of type. All right? I'm using find object of type. Okay, I'm using find object of type, but why is this a problem? Because it says here, okay, blah, 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 and it says I'm getting my resource prefabs, and down here where it says game controller, it says find object of type game controller. Okay. Well, don't I have a game controller? Why is it that how come it's initializing, but we don't know which one goes first. Absolutely. So we want our bullet factory actually to trigger after everything else. So again, there's execution order we can use. We can definitely do execution order. But remember, when my bullet factory is being called, right? My bullet factory is being called and something else is happening. So let's take a look at when the bullet factory is being called, right? Because remember, the bullet factory is being called somewhere. And let's go back to this. Let's stop this insanity. And if I go to the we have to go into the platformer settings. Okay, I'm getting interrupted here. You know you're on camera, huh? On YouTube. All right. I can't do this right now. Yeah, I have to come back. I don't know. All right, so let's. Sorry, he's asking me for his Apple password. I'm like, I don't know. Okay, so you got to figure out what's happening. So my game controller is the one that's generating the bullets. So in my game controller, it's triggering on start. Okay. So how the heck, if the game controller is not working, I mean, game controller is there, it's triggering the start method, and then it's triggering this. So, I mean, how is it going to find stuff? So bullet manager instance init, this is going to be accessed here, right, as an example, and the only time this is going to be accessed is when I go to start. So this is a problem, right? And it's like I want to have my the execution order happen first, and I don't want to mess with execution order first. I want to start seeing if I can fix my problem with what I'm doing here. All right. Other thing I have in my scripts, I have a bunch of scripts now that I didn't have before, and I have a bullet factory, and the bullet factory is being accessed, right? So bullet factory is being initialized when I call the bullet factory. Game controller, right? I'm saying, hey, bullet manager. So let's go back to bullet manager, because where did this error come from? Remember? So let's go back to bullet manager. Here's the bullet manager. And bullet manager is getting no references to anything. So there's no references. Bullet manager is being the first thing that triggers. Then it's going to go, okay, cool. I want to go down here and I want to start loading my bullets with different kinds of bullets. Here's my bullet pool. When I'm building my bullet pool, it calls the bullet factory. Go to definition. Okay, take a look at this structure, right? I'm building my bullet pool in my bullet manager. It's going to call the bullet factory. Bullet factory is going to be instantiated, right? And then after the bullet factory is being instantiated, then what's going to happen is, you know what? It's you're going to get to the point. Sorry, getting a little bit distracted. Someone's trying to get their password. I don't know the password. Okay, so I'm just trying to think here. So then the other way is what is the execution order? Like Russ said, there is an execution order that follows. But now, if you think about this, that's the only time that I'm actually calling the bullet factory at once. However, here's the thing that's happened, right? The bullet factory coming back into the scene, and when I first start off the scene, everything's great. But now that I'm coming back into the scene, right? I'm looking for something, because my bullet factory is still alive, my friends. My bullet factory hasn't died just because I left the scene. Remember, I've made a whole new structure. So when I leave the scene and come back, my bullet factory is still there. And my bullet factory can't find my my object because my object isn't there yet. It's trying to find something, but the object doesn't exist. Right? Does that make sense? But the bullet factory is it's already instantiated. An instance of the bullet factory, we've made it a singleton, and the instance of the bullet factory is alive in the hierarchy. It's not gone away. It's like don't destroy on load is what we've kind of made it equivalent. So a couple of things we can do. We can clean up before we die, right? We can clean up the bullet factory. We can close things down, right? We can destroy the bullet factory, and but remember that it has an instance. How do I destroy a class, right? In my application, I can't, right? It's not like C++. I mean, I call the destructor, right, directly, but that's not how I'm cleaning up. So it's almost like I have to. I have to kind of destroy a reference to the bullet factory, or, and I'm just putting it out there too, because this is the structure we put together, right, in our code. That's why we're having the error that we're having when we come back to play again. What about execution order? Do you think that's going to save us? Russ, what do you think? Think about this. The bullet factory is already in play when I come back into the scene, right? Will it make a difference if I change the execution order? And if people don't know what that means, if I look at the project settings, if I'm not wrong, I think it is in, not the package manager, and not the preset manager, script execution orders right here. So take a look at this. It says my cross-platform input tile input is -1001. This happens first. Then the event system triggers. Then TextMesh Pro. Then Unity Cinemachine Pixel Perfect triggers at -1. And then something else. Okay? I want to add something else that comes into play first. So here's something. Russell says you could put a check in Bullet Factory that if the game controller is null, look for it again. Okay, but when? After 10 seconds? After 1 second? After 20 frames? It's a problem. Let's do this. I'm gonna think about that, but let's do this instead. Let's put in inside of our execution order. We can find all the scripts that are in our code, right? So example would be the bar controller, the bullet controller, and the game controller. So the game controller script is going to go first. That's what we want in our whenever we execute our order. That's what we want game controller to be triggered first. And then after game controller, we want our bullet manager, right? So notice there's bullet controller, right? And then there's anything else that's in here, right? But do you see anywhere where there is we have a bullet controller, that's there. So I can put bullet controller after. By the way, for those people who forgot what bullet controller is, if I look at bullet controller, do we need to do that? Well, bullet controller does a couple things. It says, hey, thank you very much for instantiating me. What I want is for me to, I want to go to the bullet manager and get an instance, right? And I'm going to return a bullet from the bullet controller, right? And the bullet controller is going to, I'm going to return this bullet to the bullet controller if I have it. Or I want to get all the context. So this is what we did last week, right? So that's what the bullet controller does. So, but wait a minute. Where is, in my execution order, where is my other stuff? If I click add, how come I don't have my bullet factory and all this kind of stuff? Because, my friends, what it worked when you did it, looking for null. Yeah, the reason why you can't find this in execution order, and sometimes you need to troubleshoot by doing this kind of stuff and change the execution order of scripts. These scripts are attached only that of type mono behavior. If these aren't mono behavior scripts, they won't appear here by default. So you can't see them here if they're not mono behavior. So this is useless. I'm just saying, like, that's just a problem, right? Let's do what Russ suggested, which is in my bullet factory, right? It should look for the instance again. So here I got my game controller, and then when I get a reference to the game controller here, what happens if game controller is no good? So what would you recommend, Russ? How would you code this? Would you try and get it and then do just an if statement and get it again?
No, you scroll down.
All right.
Because the only time game controller comes up is at the end of the script.
Well, here's where we actually get a reference to it. Find by object of type.
But because this is a singleton, that you don't go through the initialize again.
I never go through there again.
It's down here, the transform parent. I put the if check around that.
All right. And what you're going to say is if
game controller is not null,
game controller is not equal to null, then do this check, right? Because if we don't, and you're going to put it around both? No, just around this.
No, just around.
Right? Just around this. If it's not null, then do this. Else, what do you want to do again? Nothing?
Get the game controller find object again. Just copy the one
else. Because what's happened is it's come down, and it's never going to go to the initializer again because it only happens once. And that's a very good point. The initialize is never going to initialize again. Right? So then we have to do this again. So find the object first, and then do this. That's what you're saying. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can't you not remove this? Because we're doing it anyway, right? So this should be here. This should be here. And then if game controller is equal to null, would it not be best just to do this stuff right here?
No, sure. I will.
Yeah, no. I want to see. I'm just thinking now that we're talking, right? You've given me the idea, and this is, I think, might be better, right? So this way, you're only doing it once. All right, so let's try this out and see if that's a problem now, or if we've solved our issue. And I'm pointing this out because we haven't seen this issue yet. There's been no call to see this issue. Okay.
I see this issue all the time.
Well, I'm saying in our time together, right? So number 2, he's dead. Number 3, it goes to the end scene. We restart and we're good, right? And now we're okay again. We don't have that funny error that we had before. And he can fire bullets. We're good to go. He's getting eaten. And let's see if he gets eaten again. He does. And he's getting eaten as he goes up the hill, and he gets set. Good. Excellent. Looks good, right? All right, so this is great. We've made scenes. This is a great place to stop. I would have liked to have sounds, and we can probably fit it in, but it's going to cost us more time, and I'm just going to leave that for next week with special effects and stuff like that. Okay, so we didn't quite get to sounds. So I'm going to say file, save project, and we're going to exit, and I'm going to put this up on GitHub. All right, so git add dot git commit -m, and we're going to say added start and end scenes, and we also added some additional materials. Git push. All right, so that is the thing for today. Please look out for the I'll make an announcement later on for the test that will be released. That's what's remaining. If you look at the schedule, there's supposed to be this theoretical test that goes from today until Saturday. Please look out for that. Again, I don't suspect that it's not going to be very difficult. It's going to cover everything from the last time. So I believe that's after week 5, if I'm not wrong, because we had our test week 4, the last test. So from week 5 on, week 5 to week 12. So it's covering like 7 weeks, 6 weeks, not including the midterm, because midterm was a thing. So it's about like I said, yeah, about 6 weeks of PowerPoints, but not including last week. There wasn't anything last week. We didn't have a lab, and the week before. So you're looking at probably 4 PowerPoints. It's not a lot. So chances are probably in a range of about between 30 and 40 questions that you're going to get. Randomized, multiple choice, true, false kind of stuff coming right out of the PowerPoints. And again, it'll be live later on today. All right, questions? Anything else that we haven't covered today before we stop for the day? Okay, I'm going to stop recording. Thank you for those who are watching live. And any questions?